Hello, 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 everyone. Hi. Wow, it's been a while. It's been a couple of days. Hi. Oh my gosh. Wow. Look at how many of you are here right now hanging out. Cool. Wow, everyone's really, really excited and happy. I like hearing that. Why are you all so energetic today? Like, seriously. What the hell's going on? Why do you have more energy than I do right now? It's not fair. I'm so tired. I'm so tired. Oh my god. Oh god, I'm exhausted. But it's okay. It's worth it. It's worth it. I have a very important stream I want to do with all of you today. Oh, okay, my yawn. There's gonna be a lot of yawning today, okay? I'm tired, alright? But you know what? Look, I'm not tired enough to be able to do what I want to do with all of you today. I hope you're all having a wonderful day. I'm seeing some familiar and some new faces. Wow, a lot of you are really excited for today's stream. If you are seeing the title, you can obviously tell how today I'm going to be showing all of you how I go about separating my VTuber art for a Live2d Cubism. I know that this is not a new concept for me. Some of you may or may not know this, but I have made a video similar to this in the past. Specifically like right here, this video here. However, when I was when I was watching this video, I came to realize how bad it was. I don't know, the way I went about talking about how you separate everything and how you go about the whole art, I was like, oh god, wow, the knowledge that I have now is just not even in comparison to what I did back then. And so because of how outdated this video was, I thought it might be a good idea to kind of do like a whole new updated version on this, because a lot of stuff has changed. A lot of stuff has changed in the sense of how I separate. Sorry, I'm still collecting my brain right now, my brain cells. A lot has changed in the sense of how I go about separating my art, and I was kind of looking at some of the comments from on this video. There was a lot of confusion. A lot of people are saying how this previous video was very overwhelming. It was confusing. Some stuff didn't get answered. I actually pulled a couple of comments from this video, and obviously if any of you have questions about separating art and stuff in Live2d, I'll try to answer them as best as I can. I would like to just put a little disclaimer that I'm not like a full-time Live2d modeler or an artist. I've made a couple models here in the past. I've made the one that you're seeing right here. This is for one of my clients, Kuroku. It's already finished, and since it's already finished, I can kind of go through the whole entire process of how I did all the layer separation, because it did take me some time. And I learned a bunch of new things. So I'm going to cover some of like the more basic type of separation, but I am going to show you like how I went about separating all of this and kind of my thought process behind some of it, since every artist has their own way on how they separate stuff. Again, like the way that I'm going to show you is not the only way you can do this. There's lots of other different ways you can go about separating art. However, I will point out a couple of things that I think is a pretty universal, I guess, I'm trying to think of the word, like practice, general guideline. I'm not sure. There are certain things about Live2d, yeah, especially for VTuber art, on how you should go about with the separation, because depending on how, or well, what it is you want to do in Live2d, that's going to determine on how you go about the separation for some of these items. And I'll kind of like point some of that out as we kind of talk about all of this. It's going to be very different than like anything that I have done before. All of my VODs stay up. If you've ever given an absolute shit about me and checked out my live streams, you would know that they stay up. So yeah, they'll be up. So why don't we kind of start off with why don't we kind of start off with what program it is that I'm using? There are a lot of different art type programs that you can use to make your VTuber model. I'm using Clip Studio Paint in particular. You can also use Photoshop, Adobe Illustrator. I've seen some people use, what's it called? I don't know why I wanted to say Canva. Could you imagine somebody... I'm making my entire VTuber model from Canva. Wait a minute. Can Canva export in PSD? Hold on. Hold on real quick. Hold on. If it can export in PSD, then that means you can. Hold on. Ooh, no, it can't. It can do PDF. Okay, that matters a lot, actually. So it doesn't matter what art program you use. The only thing that matters when it comes to making your VTuber model art is if it can be exported in a PSD, because when you go to import it into Live2d Cubism, it only registers PSD formats. So as long as you can export it in PSD, I don't know, like, does MS Paint export in PSD? You could probably do that, or GIMP or something. If it can, then yeah, you can make your VTuber model in that. And when I say by make your VTuber model, I'm talking about the art. So I've seen some people kind of confusing the difference between drawing your model and then actually doing the animations. So what I'm about to show you today is just the art. I'm not going to show you how to draw. I'm going to show you how to take your art and actually separate it into a bunch of little pieces, whether you are about to draw your model or if you have already kind of drawn something and you're like, oh shoot, what should I, like, how do I cut this up and whatever. Or if you're a Live2d animator and you received a PSD and maybe there's some parts that aren't really cut up the way you would like them, how do you kind of go about separating that? That's kind of what I'm going to review today. If any of you do want me to do like actual art where I will show you how to draw, because I have this here that I had commissioned somebody and they decided to not finish it, so I asked them just to send me the sketch and I will go over it. Then I'll actually show you like the whole, like, how I would go about drawing it, but that will be in another stream, simply because I'm so fucking tired. So I'm going over like a product that I have drawn myself and have already completed. Yeah, grab yourself some tea, relax. I'm drinking an avocado smoothie, which is very interesting. It's a fresh avocado slush. Apparently this is like a really popular thing at bubble tea shops, and I normally kind of avoid avocado. It's like, look, I like avocado, but I've never kind of thought of having it in like bubble tea before. It's interesting. It's very interesting. Let me see here. So, why don't we start off with... I'm sure you could probably see like these folders here, right? I have like a big folder here. And then I have another folder. I probably should have named this folder, actually. I should name... So, this big folder right here with the red X, I know it might be a little hard to see. But this... here, you know what? Why don't I duplicate this so I can actually show you what the hell I'm talking about? I know some people need a lot of things showing up on screen, so you know, here I will accommodate. I will accommodate. So let's take this, put this down here. So, you see this folder right here? I'm sure you're probably wondering what the hell this is. So because I'm using Clip Studio Paint, there is a special tool that I can use, which you can probably find in any other art program. It's the symmetry ruler. And if I show it, if I click on that, it will show you the ruler. So I have this ruler set up because when I was drawing this, if you're just drawing a front-facing model, you're not drawing an asymmetrical model, it's literally just symmetrical. The tool makes it really, really easy for you because you don't have to worry about drawing the other side, as long as it's all symmetrical, of course. And what's nice about Clip Studio Paint is that I'm able to attach this onto like a folder and keep it on its own separate layer, and I can toggle it on and off. So anytime I don't want to show the ruler, I can just do that. Or if I want to show it again, I can just click on it. So I have this here because I have opened up my Clip Studio Paint file. If this were my PSD file, when I go to export this as a PSD, because you go to single layer and then you do the, not the Photoshop big. Oh, here, let me help you for my zoomers here. Oh, it actually doesn't show you on here. Well, I'm smart. I'm really smart. Okay, I see that you can't actually see me clicking on it. When I went to File, Export Single Layer, there's two options. One of them is Photoshop Big Document, and the other one says Photoshop Document. The difference is that the Photoshop Big Document you don't want to do. For whatever reason, Live2d Cubism does not like that kind of file. I don't know why. Maybe if I like gave a shit and like read the documentations, I could tell you. There's probably like an actual technical reason why. I don't care enough to read it, so whatever. So instead of Photoshop Big Document, don't do that. You want to do PSD. And for anyone who's dyslexic, it can be a little confusing because it will say PSB and PSD. Don't click on PSB. Click on PSD. Photoshop Document. You can tell the difference because there's a big matters in this. So I'll throw a screenshot. I'll throw a screenshot up on the screen for when I go to edit this into a video later. For anyone who uses Clip Studio Paint, that's how you'll export it. However, when you do export that, this symmetry ruler folder that I have is not gonna work. It's just gonna, it won't work. So usually when I go to export this, I'll save this as a duplicate Clip Studio Paint file, and then I'll take that duplicate, delete this entirely, like delete this folder. Obviously you move the folder out of this because it was inside, and then you delete it. And then I would save it, or well, export it as a Photoshop document. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. If I was using like different art programs, I could probably guide you through how to do, but I think you can figure it out. If you've used your art program long enough, you should be able to figure out how to export things in a PSD. And you should also understand that certain art programs have special abilities with their layers. And depending on how your program goes about those layers, it's not going to show up properly in Live2d Cubism. I know specifically for Clip Studio Paint, the only layers that I can use are normal, obviously, the normal layer. And then I can use multiply. And then I have a layer. It's you can't see it on my stream, but when I click on this little like drop down menu right here, which I can definitely show you that at least. I can at least show you where my cursor is. So you see how my cursor is right here? When I actually click on that, a drop down menu will show up. I can use normal, multiply, and I can use add. In Clip Studio Paint, there's 2 layer files called add and add glow, and then there's overlay, screen, color dodge, glow dodge, you know, all the other stuff. None of that will register in Live2d Cubism. I have to use add. That's kind of like a special thing. I don't know how it is in other art programs, but every art program has something similar where there's like a multiply layer. There's like some kind of additive. It's called additive. Sometimes it could be the add glow. It's called different things in some programs. So keep that in mind when you are drawing your model, because I know some artists have like an artistic style where they'll do like screen or overlay or soft lights, color burns and stuff. If you want that to show up on your art properly, there's a couple different things you can do. I've seen some artists, or at least I know I have in the past, I've wanted to do some kind of like screen color, and what I've had to do is whatever color I wanted that screen layer to be on, usually I do it for the eyes in particular. Like I will go to the eye here, and maybe I want to draw like, let me see here. I'll put screen. I'll just select the color right here. And then we'll just, I don't know, we'll just put that there. Okay, that little circle, right? This little tiny circle. If I wanted that to show up all pretty and whatever, let's see. This is what glow looks like. Look, that looks terrible. This is soft light. This is, okay, overlay. Overlay looks really pretty. So if I try to put that in Live2d Cubism after I export this into a PSD, that's not going to work. It's not going to show up properly. It's just not going to work. But what I could do is, if this was on here, I usually take like another layer. I'm trying to remember, do I do it like this? No, I do not do it like that. I do it like this color that I have it on. Say like I want it to be on like this pupil thingy here. I would take just like a new layer, and I would just well, actually, let's make this a little bit simpler on our brains. You could literally just do this. I just duplicate the overlay layer, take this, put it under a normal layer. Because if you look, I'm hiding the layer and it's still showing up, right? And then I take the overlay layer and I'll put it on the normal layer. All I did was just duplicate it, but instead of having the special effect, I put it as a normal layer and then I just merge it. So that way you're still having this kind of pretty effect. It's not going to exactly be the same. You might have a little bit of color differentiating of that special effect. That's just how Live2d works. So it's just something you're going to have to keep in mind when you're trying to come up with drawing. I know I saw a lot of comments on the video talking about how complicated Live2d is in making VTuber models, and I won't lie, it is a little complicated, but just because it's complicated doesn't mean it's not doable. My biggest mistake on that video was overwhelming people with the amount of information and not taking the time to really show you the process, because a lot of things are complicated in life. I'm example A. Hi. And so I feel like if we just kind of take our time and I just kind of show you the process, maybe this will kind of make more sense and you won't feel as overwhelmed when tackling on this kind of stuff. Because I feel like a lot of people who commission artists especially for VTuber models, do not understand how much work goes into these. And even though there is a lot of work that goes into this kind of stuff, it doesn't mean that you can't learn how to do it yourself. I think everyone is capable of making their own VTuber model, regardless of your art skills. Literally, you could make like a stick figure VTuber model, and in following this guide will show you how to cut it up and make it Live2d ready. The problem is that a lot of people don't want to take the time, or they feel like they don't have the drawing skills, and it is worth hiring someone else to do it because, well, this kind of stuff can take a long time depending on how complex you want it to do and your art style. And like, you know what takes up the most amount of time for a Live2d model art? I know some people who draw really fast and they're like, it really doesn't take that much time, Mari, blah, blah, blah. Okay, sure. Technically it doesn't. Like, it's like any other art commission, but you know what does take up a lot of time? Conceptualizing. Conceptualizing the animation of what you want the model to look like. In, I guess, I don't know why I want to say real time, but when it's moving around. So do you see how, like, you know, look at me, for example. Let's just take a little look at me real quick, okay? Look at me. Hi. 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 Do you see how when my head turns? And how I'm turning and stuff? So who do you think conceptualizes how this is going to look? The Live2d artist or the modeler? It's a little bit of both. So when you're drawing your art, you want to make sure you have a general idea of how it's going to look when it's moving around. And then when you are a Live2d modeler, you also need to understand pretty much like animation. You're learning animation. You're learning to take all the different art pieces, all the different layers, and making it all move in a very like fluid way. And so this is where a lot of frustration and confusion comes in, because some artists don't conceptualize what the movement's going to be for their model, and they don't cut up all the layers correctly, which then makes it a little bit more difficult for the Live2d modeler who's trying to move it, because they don't want to. Something that a lot of artists don't realize is that Live2d modelers do not want to tamper with the art. They will try their best to work with what is giving with them. But as an artist, if you are not separating the layers correctly, you are limiting the movements. And I personally feel like if someone commissioned you and paid you a lot of money, you should do your job correctly and layer things correctly. That might be a hot take, but that's how I feel personally. And as someone who's been on all of the spectrums of making Live2d models, as well as people who have commissioned other people, you paid for them, okay? You paid for it to be separated professionally. And how do you separate it professionally? You got to think about how it's being moved. So let's talk about that. I'm just moving myself. Excuse me. Okay. So, learning how to do Live2d yourself is just good to kind of give you context on what it is that you want, because there is expectations. Some art styles have certain animations to it too. So some things don't make sense to cut up depending on like your art style, whereas some stuff you should cut up. I think the best rule of thumb is to have the Live2d modeler and the artist communicate, because if for whatever reason, if the Live2d modeler is unclear of how it should look, they should be able to contact the artist without you being charged extra. I find that very bizarre when artists charge extra because they didn't separate it correctly. I feel like that's kind of the artist's fault, personally, but you know, that's a hot take that some people disagree with. Let me see. Let me show you how I go about separating things and what I take into consideration when I talk about moving parts. I'm not saying you need to draw a reference angle sheet when you draw, your client's model or your own model. It can help though, and it can really help the Live2d modeler too if you have different perspectives, such as like you yourself draw like a really like black line art sketch of like the face turning or the blinking or the smiling. You don't have to, but it can definitely save you a lot of time. A lot of time, because then the Live2d modeler doesn't have to guess on how the art should look when they're manipulating it. So why don't we hide pretty much everything here? As you can tell, like this folder here, I would name the folder after the client. So, oh, why is my keyboard in Japanese? My keyboard's in Japanese right now. That's interesting. Okay. I name it like this because this is kind of preference for the Live2d modeler, but when you have one folder that kind of encapsulates the entire model, this can make it register in Live2d Cubism as the entire thing, which kind of makes it easy if the Live2d modeler wants to like have some kind of deformer where it makes the entire model like move all around in terms of like this. Let me see here. Oh, what the heck? Hello? Hello? Oh, okay, it's just bugging out right now. Oh yeah, this is the best part about making VTuber models. Your canvas size, and when it's too big and your computer can't handle it. Oh, I love seeing this. This is my favorite. Yeah, I love that. This is gonna be a fun stream. So my canvas size for this model for the client here, I did 6,000 by 9,000. That's a really big canvas size. The DPI doesn't matter. It's at 72 for me. It doesn't matter. DPI is for printing, so you don't need to worry about it. But the canvas size matters a lot because the smaller the canvas size, the more pixelated the model will look when it's zoomed in. If you notice me, I'm kind of crispy. I'm crispy clean, right? Like I'm very crispy right now. That's because when I commissioned Tsukimi, I paid extra for a bigger canvas size, which yes, some artists will charge you extra to make a big canvas size, and mine is 6,000 by 9,000. The reason for that is because I wanted to make sure when I zoom in, especially when I, when I lean forward and I really want to talk to you and stuff, I want to make sure I don't look blurry. The bare minimum of what you should do for your canvas size, if your computer can't handle 6,000 by 9,000, because I won't lie, it is intensive on your computer. The bare minimum from, let me see. I had like a guide from Date who does a lot of HoloLive rigging. He recommends that the bare minimum is 2,000 by 4,000, I believe. I believe that's what he had said. I will look back at that and I'll have like a screenshot on the edited version, but I believe he had said the bare minimum has to be 2,000 by 4,000, and that's what my old model files used to be in. And when you zoom in on those models, they were a little pixelated, but not so much to the point where I was like, ooh, that doesn't look good. Ooh. And he's a professional, so I'm gonna take his word on it, just saying. And I used to do that too, and then I think the maximum he talked about is 9,000 to 12,000, and that's a really big file. Like, if your computer can handle that, can I have your computer? Because like that's pretty awesome if your computer can handle that. So yeah. So weird question, why is there so much empty space on the big can? That is not a weird question at all. That's not a weird question. That's actually a good question. It's a very good question. I don't know. Probably because I could have drawn the model a little bit bigger, maybe. No, I'm just kidding. So when I was drawing Kuroku's model, they had specified a certain height for me. I originally made Kuroku very tall, and we decided to make Kuroku a little bit shorter. So that's why like there's a little bit extra space on here. Also the tail. You have to think about the tail. When you load it into Live2d Cubism, you can make the model kind of move out of the canvas range if you want. That's not like a big deal, but I know for like I know for, well, depending on what it is you want to do, if for whatever reason, if the modeler wanted to inflate certain parts of the model or make things bigger, having the retail space on the canvas is really important, because if you don't have enough space, I haven't tested this yet, so I'm not entirely sure, but I think it might clip some stuff if you don't have enough space for all the moving parts. Like, that's why for the tail, I made it a little bit wider, so that way there's enough room for the tail to swing back and forth if necessary. I would like to talk to a Live2d modeler who has attempted to do clipping, or I might try it, to be honest. I might actually try doing something where I make the canvas size like smaller where it cuts out. I'm wondering if it's going to export weird. So we'll revisit that question another day for another stream. Yeah, I think there's, it wouldn't surprise me if that had something to do with it. Let me take a sip of my drink before continuing. All right, so that's kind of the general basis of separating your art in terms of like the program, why I chose this canvas size, how I kind of like, oh wait, actually there's one more thing I want to talk about. I saw some people in the comment section talk about left and right and wondering what the hell that is and what I'm talking about. I know some of you probably already know this because you probably have tried this before. But for those of you who don't know, left and right is when my computer wants to zoom in on the model. You good, computer? PC-chan? You know, it's kind of bad, but I just cleaned out my computer and it I get 89.1 gigabytes left out of my 931 gigabytes on my C drive. Please donate to this channel so I can afford more storage on my computer, because I almost crashed my hard drive. Anyways, so left and right. When you're looking at your model, you'll notice there's a left side. This is the left side. And then there is a right side. And well, you're probably wondering, but Mari, that doesn't make any sense. You're saying it's the opposite sides are the left and the right. That doesn't make any sense. I know my left and my right. Well, that's because I'm talking about it from the model's perspective. If you were to turn around, okay? If you were to turn around, this would be your left side. So when you are separating your layers, and when I show you my layers here, you will notice that I have stuff separated from right to left. And that is because the way you can do things in Live2d Cubism, you can have a lot of control on like wind physics, on how things should move. If you ever wanted to wink, you can't really do that if you don't separate your eyes, right? Because if you have your eyelashes on the same layers, you're not going to be able to wink. It doesn't work like that in the program. So you have to separate certain things from the left to the right. Now, this, remember how I said like there's that whole universal thing? That is like the universal thing. There's certain stuff, especially for the eyes in particular, that need to be separated from the left and the right, as well as your limbs, such as your arms and your legs. There's a couple of things that I will show you where it's kind of debatable on if you want to separate it from left to right. That's kind of up to you. I'm not going to call you a scammer if you don't separate the left boob and the right boob. Like, some people keep it together. It's fine. It's not a big deal. But if the modeler was like, hey, I want to have some floppy titties or something, can you separate them? Okay, then just separate them. not a big deal. Like, I'm trying to think. I don't have boobs on this model, so I can't really like show you that. But you know, hey, if you ever stick around, you want me to draw this one, we can talk about that. But you know, that's a different story. So. Donate for Mari's heart. Dude, this is pretty bad. I'm not gonna lie. Because okay, so I'm recording from the perspective that you see with me, and then I have my actual like cubism up on my computer, so I'm also recording on that, so I'm double recording, and I think like this is my gaming computer. So not only do I game, but I draw and I also video edit on here, and that's why I run out of storage, because I edit my videos and all of my project files, all those stupid memes and stuff. And yes, I know some people are probably like, well, why don't you have like a separate hard drive? I do. And that's full too. I have a lot of editing presets and stuff. You know, I'm a content creator, okay? I don't have enough space for everything. It's just part of the gig, all right? It's part of the job. So, now we have covered all the general stuff about Live2d. If anything's not clear, let me know. I'll try to answer them as I go along with stuff, but that is kind of like the general overview. Now I can show you the nitty-gritty stuff, which is how I go about separating each layer. So, why don't we start by hiding everything and go one by one. We have a hat, a jellyfish axolotl hat, which, by the way, shout out to Kudo for commissioning me for this and being so patient while I worked on this. I appreciate you. And from my other commissioners, I am hoping that I can also start working on finishing all of yours by, well, probably after I finish my taxes. Still haven't finished that yet. It's okay. I still got like a week. Wasn't it megabytes and not giga? Well, I have like a terabyte hard drive for my C drive. So besides that, and then I have like a... Actually, what do I have for my storage drives? I have a terabyte for my C drive, but technically you don't get the full terabyte. I don't know if anyone knows that, but when you like buy storage drives, you don't actually get the full amount it says. Like, I have the terabyte for my C drive. I have a terabyte for my E drive, which is where I put all of my recordings and my video games and stuff. You only get like 931 gigabytes out of it. That's just how hard drives work. And then I have like an editing drive that's 2 terabytes, but technically it's 1.81 terabyte, you know. And that's full too. It's pretty bad. I don't want to show you my drives. It's pretty bad. You don't want to see them, but they're bad. It's going to make you scream. So let's not worry about that. Okay. So some of you are probably wondering, okay, I'm about to show you all the separation and stuff. Why does this stuff matter? Like, why am I taking such a long time to explain the overview? Why don't I just show you how to separate the layers? Because if you can't do the bare minimum of making sure the canvas size is correct, you are being conscious about the layer type that you're using, or just making sure stuff is cut up correctly, then you're gonna run into an issue where I had when I did my video, when I did my Live2d modeling, which is, let me find you the exact clip here. Oh yeah. This is what happens when you don't separate things and move stuff around correctly. I had no idea what I was doing when I was doing Live2d, when I was working with Live2d Cubism. I had no idea what I was doing. Check this out. You see what my neck is doing? Who remembers long neck Mari? Yeah, that is cursed. Because when I was working on my model in Live2d Cubism, also the funny thing that we didn't have, you guys are so lucky. Back in my day of VTubing, we didn't have the whole transparency capture in VTube Studio. We had to green screen ourselves, and you could tell I had a little bit of the green screen here. And you could see it because, well, fun little fact, when you're drawing your model, draw the line art a little bit thicker. I know that could be uncomfortable for some people's art styles, but, well, actually, it's not an issue anymore because you guys have transparency capture, so you don't have to worry about it. But the way you would combat this disgusting green screen effect is you would draw the line art a little bit thicker. So that way, when you chroma key it, you'd have the luxury of being more aggressive with it without it cutting into, like, the actual art. But you guys don't have to worry about that anymore, so you're chilling. But yeah, this happened because when I went to go put this in Live2d Cubism, I didn't know how my head should look when I look up. So, because I didn't really know how to draw. This isn't my art. Moiko drew this. With my Mari 2.0, I asked her if she could draw like different face angles for myself so that way I could have a general guideline on what it should look like, because this was just me guessing. I did this modeling guessing what it should look like, and this is just cursed. It's not on her. It's definitely on me. I didn't know how it was supposed to look. So that's why it's important to kind of make sure you're working alongside with your artist, unless if you are the artist. And again, it doesn't hurt to like ask for a face angle reference. It might cost you extra because that does take time and like the artist has to kind of like do that, but you can definitely just ask like, hey, like, you know, could I just have like a face angle reference sheet just for the modeling? And it doesn't have to be fully rendered. It can literally just be a line art. I should have done that. I did that for 2.0 though, which is why that model looked way better than how this one looked. It was so good. It was so good. This is your second birthday you spent watching. Why? Didn't you already have a birthday this year? Huh? Anyways, happy birthday. Yeah, Long Neck Mari was... Ooh, that was interesting. It was definitely interesting. But who cares about Long Neck Mari? We're here to learn about what you can do now. So... You know what? Instead of doing the hat first, why don't we just do the face first? Because not everyone's going to have a hat, right, Mari? That's stupid. Let's worry about that towards the end. Let's focus on the head. Ooh, do you see how different this looks? This is kind of different, right? Ooh, yep. I'm sure some people who probably are familiar with drawing models are wondering why I drew the head this way. Because it's different than what we used to do. So... I know I'm not going to be covering how to draw stuff, but I'll just go over really quickly. I drew the face like this, where it has kind of like, you have the cheeks, and then instead of me drawing a complete circular head, like how most, you know, back in the old days when people would draw VTuber models, I drew it like this because I saw a lot of Japanese Live2d modelers talk about how this is a little bit better when it comes to doing the modeling for the face, because a lot of Live2d modelers said these extra spaces right here are not that important, and usually it's kind of a pain because you have to kind of like take that extra circle and make it look like this anyways when you're doing head turns. Otherwise you deal with like your face poking through and stuff. So if you're drawing, you can draw a full circle, but then also include like a mid circle here. That's just my preference though. You don't have to do that. You could just draw like the normal like head shape. It's not a big deal. It's just this makes it a little bit easier. Unless if your client wants a bald toggle, then you kind of have to draw the full head. But this could be like a good guide. That doesn't matter though. We're not here for that. We're here to talk about layers. So let's talk about layers. Right here. You'll notice that on the head, I have it labeled head. Does that make sense? Why it's head? Because it's head. It's head. When you open up the Live2d Cubism program and it's in a folder like this, Live2d is going to say, oh, hey, you're talking about the head. The head includes the eyes, the eyebrows, the nose, the mouth, everything that's on the face. You could call it face if you want. I call it head. I just think it makes more sense. Why don't I include the hair in this? Because, I mean, you could technically make a folder, call it head, and then include the hair with that part. I didn't. I just did it this way. So if I were to like include the hair with this, and including the hat because he has a hat, I would put all that into a folder called head, and that's like the whole entire head. The Live2d modeler can fix the folders if he or she wants to. It's not a big deal. It's not that hard to do. And then instead of calling this head, you call it face. But this is, I guess, the face. You know what? Whatever. People are probably gonna be OCD about this. I'll just change it to face. Shut the fuck up. Okay. Alright. Here you go. It's face now. This is the face. And you know what? We'll name this head too. We'll be professional today. Oh. Okay, I was like, is that not gonna work? Okay. All that's gonna go into the head. Yay. Okay. Something that I'm going to mention right now is that when you are making these folders, if you have the layer, and when I say layer, I'm talking about if I open this up and I go all the way down to like face, this is a layer, right? This right here is a layer, the layer of the skin color. If this is the 5th layer inside all of these folders, Photoshop, or at least when you export as a PSD, it might do some weird things. So usually I don't like to have this head folder because in Live2d Cubism, you can just separate and organize all the layers however you want them to be. Usually as an artist, we put them in folders already to kind of save the modeler some time. However, I have experienced this where having the layer, the actual layer here, being 5 levels deep, causing some weird issues when I went to export it into Live2d Cubism. So if you're wondering, how do I know if it's 5 layers deep? Okay, this is the head folder. This is 1 level. This is the face one, so this is level 2. Then the new face is level 3. This color layer is level 4. And the thing is, for Clip Studio Paint, if I had opened this as a PSD and I go to save it, it will give me a warning saying, hey, this is 5 levels deep and it may cause some issues for the Photoshop document. So that's just kind of something to keep in mind when you are drawing your art and you're wondering, oh, how many separation folders should I use? You don't have to go that deep into it. Like, that's why I had this name labeled head, because I thought maybe I was gonna run into that issue, so I kept it as like that. But it looks like it's fine because this is just 4 levels in, so it's not a big deal. So why don't we hide all of these elements, well, except for the face. We're starting off with the face. If you notice, the actual face, and by the way, it's called new face because the client did not like the old face shape. I know it's kind of hard to tell the difference, but there is in fact a difference. They wanted a more pointy, elongated chin, and there's a shade later. You ever like look at those ink blot paintings where it's like, what? How do you feel about image number 1 and image number 2? Image number 1, image number 2. It is a little bit different, okay? The chin is pointier. So if you notice, there's only 3 layers for the face. Wow. There's only 3 layers. See, it's not that bad, right? I know it looks really hard and complicated, but it's really not that bad. Just 3 layers for the face, and boom, your face is done. I have the line art, I have the shade, and I have the head, the color, the skin color. If you noticed, this has this little red thing. That's because it's clipped. If I unclip it, it looks like this. And yes, you want it to look like this because when you put this in Live2d Cubism and you start turning your face and stuff, the modeler has the option to add more depth to your face. And some artists would merge the shade layer. Like some artists would just do this where it's like, okay, I have this clipped, and then they would just merge it, and then you just have 2 layers. And that's not bad. You can do it. There's nothing wrong with that. This is kind of one of those things where it's up to your preference. However, you have less control over how that shadow is going to look when the head is turning. And so for the sake of giving that luxury, or well, that option to have more depth and being able to have more movements, you should separate the face shading. And you don't have to leave it clipped. I just like to do it just so that way the client can, you know, take a little screenshot and export it without it looking all weird and stuff. So I was just nice and I just clipped it. I'm sure you're probably noticing how I named these. This kind of matters too. I know I'm supposed to be showing you all of like the different layer separations, and I keep showing you the technical overview of stuff, but this is something I would like to mention because I did see people asking in the comments of my old video about this, why I named them this way. I used to not name them like this, where it would be head underscore line. I used to do head space line. And I have learned that's not the best way to go about naming your layers. Because when you load the PSD into Live2d Cubism, it's going to assign an ID. It's going to give it a name. And if there is a space within the layer name, Live2d can't register that for whatever reason. And so it just gives it a random like layer 169 or something like that. And that can be really frustrating for the modeler who's trying to go through it and stuff. And it's not labeled properly, so then they have to take their time now renaming the layer, which means you're delaying the commission because just naming layers takes time. It actually takes time to do this. So RIP all the artists out there who were not naming their layers in the beginning, because yeah, this stuff takes a lot of time. So a lot of people ask, why do I spend all this money? Because layering and naming it correctly does take some time. It takes way more time than you would think. I have the underscore. There's 2 different ways. Actually, I think there's 3 different ways I've seen people name their layers. And this is kind of your preference. Instead of doing the underscore, I've seen some people just do capitals where it's like head and then line. And you could just do that. Or I've seen, I don't think you can do this where it's a dash. I don't think you can do head dash line. I'm pretty sure it has to be underscore. Yeah, it has to be underscore because I don't think Live2d Cubism can register when it's a dash. Correct me if I'm wrong. I cannot remember. It's been a while since I've opened up the program. But if you have it as a dash, it will register that just fine. Little details like that is super important. And again, your client paid you for that. This is kind of like what you're paying your artist for, is to make this very easy and straightforward because time is money, right? So I have this for the face, at least. I have mine as 3 different layers. If you wanted to, you could put blush in this layer. Do I have a blush? I don't think I do. I don't have a blush. Yeah, I don't have a blush. They did not ask for a blush. They didn't ask for a blush. But if I did have a blush, I would put it in the face folder. Because if you think about it, blush is kind of like a coloring. So I would just make a new layer and then I would just like add the blush here. And you could separate the blush left to right if you want to. You don't have to though. I do anyways because I don't know what the modeler wants to do with all the blush and stuff. It doesn't. And that's just like your normal cheeks, right? So if you look back at my model, you see how I got this, and this is the blush. I'm not blushing, but this is like my blush. So I'll talk about expressions if you were heavy blushing later, but yeah, you could put the blush layer on here if you wanted to. So then you'd have 4 different layers for this. That's just the face. Let's do brows next, because brows are very easy. This is also preference if you actually want to put these in a folder. I do because I know when you open it up in Live2d Cubism, it kind of makes it easier to do the left and right perspectives and up and down if they're in a folder together. You're just making the Live2d modeler's life easier. This is separated by left and right. And it's just a line. Look, see, it's not that bad, guys. See, it's just a line. It's literally just a skinny little line right there. Right? It's not that bad. And if you... Okay. This was the third option. The third naming option that you could do. So, I have this folder called Browse. And then I have L and R. I have a lot of L and Rs. And this could be an old, outdated method. I can't remember, but... When you have it as a folder like this where it says browse and then you have this as L and R, Live2d Cubism will register that this is brow L and this is brow R, and it will name the ID like that. Or if you're really paranoid about it naming it correctly, you could just type in brow L and brow R if you just want to make sure it's like named correctly. But I'm pretty sure it should auto do it, because we used to have like a script in Photoshop where you could run this script and it will take like all the folders, and if it's L and R, it'll auto name them. I don't know if that script is still around. It's really, really old, so I don't even know if it works anymore, but that used to be like the old way you could get around with like having to literally type in all of it. So best practice, just type in brow L or brow underscore L, just in case. I don't know if it auto converts it now in Live2d Cubism, because there's been a lot of updates with the program since then. But those are brows. Now here comes the fun part. Eyes. Eyes are the gateway into the soul, and it tells me if you're a sussy baka or not. There we go. You said Luna, I'm trying to read what you're saying here. I believe now that name will still display correctly, but the art mesh naming won't follow it, which is important now that VTuber Studio lets you recolor the art mesh. The end product is better if the names art correctly on the... Yeah. I'm gonna rephrase what you said because that was confusing to read. Sorry. You're correct. The biggest reason why you want to name these layers correctly is because, yeah, I can go into VTuber Studio and I can color certain stuff. Like, let me see. I can take... I haven't really messed with Live2d... No, I haven't really messed with VTuber Studio in a hot minute, but... If I were to... Art mesh color preset. Oh, I don't even have something set up like this. Oh god, it's such a tedious process to do this. But yes, I could like color different things on my model on the screen for all of you. Or, you know, I could just do an awesome transformation. Hey, look at that! I'm really cool now. You should subscribe because I just automatically have it. So, let's say I didn't have this transformation though. I could go in and manually do it, although you're not going to get the colors that I have. This, because it's literally, it's a saturation layer. And I have white hair, and that's not gonna really translate that well, but it doesn't matter. So yeah, you can do this stuff in VTube Studio. However, imagine having to go through several hundred layers that are layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, layer, you know, well, they call it art mesh. Layer and art mesh are the same thing. Art mesh 1, art mesh 2, art mesh 3. And you have to figure out what it is. So yes, please, I've spent a lot of time on this because it's that important. Label the layers for your client. They are paying you to do this, please. Please. And you might think, wow, Mari, you're really shitting on art. No, like, please, just do it. Just do it. Same thing if you're the modeler. I've seen modelers like add things into the files and they don't name them. So I have no idea what the hell it is that I'm like toggling on right now. And it turns out it's like a random mask layer that they put on there. Please just label it mask. If it's a face mask, just label it, which I'll get into that when I talk about like the fancy advanced stuff that you can put on a model's PSD. So we'll get into that later. So let's talk about the eyes first, okay? This is, I'm gonna hide this. No, I'm gonna hide this. Okay. If you notice here, I do have the old eyes because they do look a little bit different. Than the pupil is smaller. They asked me if I could make the pupil smaller, and so I obliged. Ooh. But I kept the old eyes on here. And the changes that I did when I had exported this into PSD for the client, I did leave the old eye folder in the old face, and you'll notice that there I have some folders where it says unseparated for some parts. I left those just in case if for whatever reason the client, I don't know, they wanted to have the old eye shape that we originally had. Like, I don't know. I feel like this is just my own personal thing. I try to keep the old stuff on here in case if they change their mind. Sometimes people change their mind on things. So that's why that's here. You don't need to have the old eyes if you change your eye shape later on. You don't have to have that. That's just something that I did. Because I don't know. I wanted to be nice, I guess. So when you do the eyes, remember how I said earlier you want to have the left side and the right side? So this is the right side. This is the left side. This is not one layer. This is broken up into multiple different layers here. Because the eyes are some of the most complex things you can have in your VTuber model. It's the most expressive thing you can possibly have. And so that requires a lot of separation parts for it. Specifically, without looking at the eyelashes, let's just look at the eye, the eyeball itself. You'll notice I have a lot of clipping layers on this. And that's just because this is the iris, right? You see how it's like inside the scala? If I didn't have this clipped, you can do this and that looks kind of cursed. So saving time by doing that. It's fine. Even if you don't have this clip, the modeler can just do that in Live2d. It's not a big deal. There's like a clipping option. So again, I did this to save time. And the nice thing about Clip Studio Paint is that when I convert this to a PSD, those clip layers stay. It's actually really cool. It's a nice little feature. Also with Clip Studio Paint, if you do have like specialty layers like your multiply and your additive, I'm pretty sure it should be fine when you export it as a PSD. However, if for whatever reason, if it's not, and it's like not exporting your multiply and your additive layer correctly, if you go to this little option here, you're not going to see it on my screen right now, but you will see an option called through. You want to click on the through because this is specifically for Clip Studio Paint users. The through means that it's going to allow whatever specialty layers you have to pass through. That's why it's called through. You want to check that. Otherwise, like, I don't know what it is for the other programs. That's just a little, like, footnote. So, let's hide the iris. Let's hide the highlights. Let's hide this and this. Because if you look right here, I have makeup on this model. That's right. You don't have to have makeup on your model. My client does. So my client has a little highlight. I know that might be hard to see. Look, little highlight. This is the top eye makeup. And this is the bottom eye makeup. And yes, I did separate the bottom eye makeup and the top eye makeup because in theory, if you think about it, when you close your eye and you're trying to deform the... Let's see, can I show you? And you're trying to like show that, you know, this is closing and stuff. If you had these merged, like if I merged these two, and then I tried to do this, it's not gonna look right. So remember how I said earlier how you have to think about how it's gonna move and how it's gonna look when it's moving? That's why I separated it. So if you have makeup on your model and you only have eyeshadow, then you don't have to worry about it all too much. But if you have bottom makeup, you know, underneath the eyes, eyelashes, you want to make sure that's separated. And some of you might be noticing, because if I open up the sclera and I have the lashes here, you notice how like the actual eyeshadow makeup is being covered, like there's only a little bit showing? That is because I thought about what is this eye gonna look like when it closes? How is that gonna look? The makeup is not going to be tiny. It's not going to be just this tiny little thing right there. You're going to see the full makeup, which is all of this, because this is kind of what it's going to look like when it's closed. It's like a guide, and it allows the Live2d modeler to really be able to like mask this eyeball, so that way when the eyeball closes, they're not stretching your makeup. I have seen some artists forgetting to like draw more of the makeup on the eyeball, and so when you'll see like a model's eye close, their makeup is just completely stretched, because if you think about it, if you have makeup on, you're gonna see the full thing, right? So when you're drawing this kind of stuff, you want to make sure that you have this extra space. And if for whatever reason, if you don't have that, as the Live2d modeler, you can kind of like pretend like you can imagine what it might look like and then draw that in. Otherwise, you're just gonna have stretched makeup. That's just, I mean, you could duplicate the layer. There is the option of duplicating it and then kind of doing some weird like masking. That's more work on the modeler. That is like an option that you could do. It really just, it depends on like your methods. But I went ahead and did that already, so that way they don't have to worry about that. I messed up on like the makeup on my first model too. Like, don't feel bad if you messed that up, because this took a lot of trial and error for me to figure out. So don't feel bad. You're like, wow, Mari's making me feel like shit. Well, good, because you want. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm kidding. But like, don't feel bad. I had to learn these things the hard way when I would do the modeling for my stuff. And I was like, man, why am I struggling so much? Am I just bad at life? Like, yes, obviously, but still. And then I was like, wait a minute. Oh, and then I had to watch like other professionals do, and I was like, oh, that makes so much more sense now. So don't feel bad. I've made these mistakes too. All right, let me see here. Let's talk about the sclera, which is the eye whites. You can name it sclera, you can name it eye whites, you can name it baka, whatever that, you know, whatever makes sense. And it's just this. If you notice, I did separate the eyeshadow. If I unclip it, it looks like this. I don't know why. I don't know why it does this little wing thing. That's, you know, I don't know why it did that, to be honest. Maybe like when I was drawing it, I didn't fully like fill this in. It's not the end of the world, but I probably should have just done that. And the reason why I extend this out is because I was following the lash. Because my idea is I'd rather leave a little extra space when you close your eye, because maybe I was like, you know, you close your eyes, maybe more shadow starts to show up, and I am trying to prevent the modeler stretching my art. That's what I'm trying to prevent. I do not want the Live2d modeler to stretch my art. So the best way for me to combat is by drawing a little excess for it. I don't do that with everything, though. It's not necessary, but at least for like little tiny details like this, I do. Because again, you're gonna see the eyes so much on screen. I do not want anything on the eyes to be stretched by any means. And then I clipped it. And like I showed you all earlier, the iris is also clipped. But we'll unclip it for now. Because if you notice, do you see how I drew the actual like eyeball? What if I told you I've worked with art where they didn't draw the full eyeball? That has happened. That has happened. It's not like people are not dumb. It's just you don't think about it when you're drawing because you're kind of like do. But you want to draw the full eyeball because if you don't, when you move the eyeball around, it's gonna look cut off and it's gonna look weird. So make sure you're drawing the full eyeball. That's why when I'm drawing the eye, I don't just automatically clip it to the eye white. I leave it unclipped. So that way I don't forget to draw the entire eyeball. And if you notice, I did put the components of the eye in its own folder because this is the iris. The reason for that is because if you notice, when I move it around, it's the entire eyeball. And you might be wondering, well, why didn't I put the highlight there? I don't know why. I probably could have. Oh, I know why. Okay, so this particular highlight I could put in the iris folder. Actually, I should put that in the iris folder. I'm stupid. I should put that in because it's right here. But you know how like some people's art styles, they might have like the highlight outside where it kind of goes on the little line art right there. That's why I wouldn't put it in the... Well, you still technically could put it in the folder. It kind of like depends on where your highlight is and stuff. Because I guess you want it to like all move together like this or whatever. It's preference, I guess. It's preference. Alright. For the highlights, it's not a big deal. Oh yeah, that's when I used to do the pupil. Right. So, the actual eyeball is composed of... Let me see here. I didn't draw the whole... See, Pixie? That's why I said you have to uncheck it. So that way you make sure you draw the whole eyeball. You baka. It's okay. It's okay. You see, it's little slip-ups. Like, sometimes you just... You don't remember. It happens. Like, we've all been there. Let me break down the components of the eye for you. I have the little tiny highlighter. I have the actual shadow. And so you might be seeing, oh, why is it on 52% and on multiply? Because this is like the actual eyeshadow. I wanted to match the eyelash. So the theory that I had when I drew this eyeball is that when the eyelash closes... I want to make sure that this is following it. Oh god, ignore the bottom lash, but I want to make sure it's following it. As an artist, you could just merge it if you want to. Like, you could just merge all of this, like the entire pupil, besides the highlight. You do not want to merge the highlight for that. But I could merge all these if I really wanted to. But, you know, when you do that... This is all just personal preference. When you do that, it kind of limits the movement on the actual eye physics. You ever like go on Twitter and you see people, they show, oh, here's my Live2d showcase on my jiggly eyeballs. My eyeballs are jello and stuff. And they have like everything moving in the eyeball. It's like, whoa, it's like jelly pudding and stuff, right? It's because all that stuff is separated. You can make it be a little jellified if it's all merged, but you just won't have as much control. And I find it to be more of a headache to be asked by the Live2d modeler to separate all the eye pieces if I just don't do it just starting out. Like, it's less of a headache. So I just separate it already, so that way I don't have to deal with that. So this is the shadow layer. You don't have to have the shadow layer, but it looks kind of weird, right? It looks kind of, I don't know, it looks kind of weird to me. So that's why I have that shadow layer. Then I have the line art of the actual eyeball, which I am realizing is hard to see. Let me just, there we go. I have the actual line art. And then I have like the little detail that goes around that. And then I have the actual pupil. And then this is the color of the eye. I have seen some, not the artist, I've seen some modelers, they'll take the entire eyeball, like they'll take the color, they'll duplicate it, and then they'll make it the same color as the line art. Because I guess when they're moving around the eyes, they can give this 3D effect. As an artist, you don't have to worry about that. That's kind of like the modeler can do that. So you don't need to like think, oh, I need to duplicate all these layers and stuff or else my client's gonna say I'm a scammer. No, you don't have to. This is kind of like that's like an advanced thing. This is honestly fine having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's just 6 layers, 6 art meshes it's gonna turn into. And well, if you have more details on the eyes, like let's say I had a little overlay layer. Remember how I said you can take the overlay layer, duplicate it on like, and then merge it on like a normal layer. So let's say you can't see that. I don't even know why yeah, Mari, they can see that. I just won't do overlay. It's fine. Let's say like I wanted to have like my art style was like, oh, I want to have like this jelly thing. I would just make this its own layer and name it, you see how like this is named detail? I would just name this detail 2. If my computer wants to work. I would just name it detail 2. Because it's technically an eye detail. You can name it whatever you want, but I name it detail because that's kind of what I've seen other people name it, and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna copy what I see. That's just the iris and the eyeball. So now I can show you the eyelashes. And I did put these in 2 separate folders because one controls the actual opening and closing. For eyelashes, you really don't have to have it in its own folder. I just kind of get overwhelmed when I see all these layers in just the eye folder. So I kind of just go ahead and already do this. You don't really have to have this folder up. You could just leave it like this because the modeler will organize it however they need to. But you still need to have things separated. If you were to take anything from this entire live stream, because I still have other stuff to go over, but at the bare minimum, please, for the love of God, and all that is anime titty holiness, okay? Please, separate the side lash and the main lash. Do not have these 2 merge together. Do not do that. Please separate those 2. It is an utter nightmare to have to do the eye opening and closing. If you don't separate that, it's not going to look right. And my biggest pet peeve is if it's merged, people just take the lasso tool and they're like, here, let's say this is merged, right? like you drew it like this, right? And then this is my biggest pet peeve with artists. Please do not do this. You just take it, you take the lasso tool like that, and then you just press the cut. Looks fine, right? Well, I'm just gonna convert this to a color to show you what I'm looking at here. Actually, you might see it better if I use a dark color. Just use black. Do you see this? Do you see this? That's not good. That is deleted pixel space. That is emptiness. That is bad. They call that the void. In Live2d terms, you do not want the void on your art. Your client paid a lot of money for this. They should not be getting the void on their art. This goes for like hair. This goes for like arm limbs and stuff. Like anything. Anything that you separate. If you were separating it like this, and you can't even be bothered to fill in the void part. Okay, so now I have holes in my art. That's great. I'm glad I paid all that money for that. Thanks. It's probably gonna get me canceled for saying that, but I genuinely get angry at that kind of stuff because that's laziness, that's sloppiness. There's no reason to do that. If you are going to do that method though, the correct way to do it, because let's say I do have this like merge because that's just how I drew it. The correct way to do it is you take this, you lasso it, you do not press the little scissor option, you press the copy and paste. And you'll do it, you'll copy and paste the part that you want to have. And then you'll take the other one and you will duplicate it. When I mean the other one is like I copied and pasted the side. I copied and pasted the side part here. So you see how like there's like this? It's kind of tedious to do this, but I would have like the main one here, right? As like my guide in case if anything happened. And then I would take this one up here. I would set it to either like, I'd set it to like either multiply or I would just lower the opacity, whatever is the easiest for you. And then I would just erase like the little excess parts that's not, you know, correct. Because you wanted to have like a nice clean thing. And I would do that for both of them where I would take this and then I would just erase it on the other layer here. And then it's, well, you want to be careful though, because you see how I just erased it too much. Again, I'm not doing like the more meticulous way, but that's how you would do it. That's the correct way to do it so there's no void. Or the other option is to just draw it separate. Like when you're doing your main eyelash stuff. Let me see here. When I drew these, when I did like my sketch of the eyes, I did not do... Excuse me, hold on, my neighbors are being too loud. Shut up. Alright, so... when I drew my eye sketch for this, I already drew the main eyelash on its own. Like, I had already kind of planned how I wanted that part to look. And if you notice, I actually do like the little line art for that. Because I wanted to make sure that when the modeler closes the eye, you have a nice, clean, closed eye. And then I drew the side lash separately. And this is kind of preference. I put it in front of the main lash because I kind of liked how the looked when I did my shading layer. Because I did my base color and then I did like my shading and stuff. The shading is a little bit tedious because you are like, you have to plan ahead when you're drawing of what the shading's going to look like and stuff. Because the other part about the lasso tool method that I showed you, you can kind of mess up the shading details too. And that kind of, but like, it's not the end of the world if it is messed up. It's not a big deal. People aren't going to notice it that much, but they will notice the void. They will definitely notice the void. It just doesn't look good. There's something like uncanny about it. So that's just the side and like the main lash. I also include a little lash highlight because I thought, you know, the makeup is kind of reflective. So my idea is that when the eye closes, the reflective light here is going to move around. And I lost my train of thought. I just wanted to have more control over the art. So that's why I included. You could merge the highlight onto the main eyelash. It's not a big deal. I just didn't. Is there a reason you wanted to separate multiply for the iris? Iris shadow normally for scar? Yeah, I explained it a little bit earlier. It's just because when the eye closes, I want the shadow to follow it. I could merge it. It depends on your art style, but I don't know. I kind of wanted to have more control over it because this type of commission, normally I would merge that shadow layer onto the iris, but this type of art style, because the eyes are white, I don't know. I felt like it might kind of look weird because if my client were to open their eyes fully wide, I would want the shadows to reflect that because technically speaking, like there is no like special details. This is the eyeball. So the lashes create some kind of more, it creates depth. It's just an artistic preference. Now, this, I literally just reamed a bunch of artists about separating this and this. I'm gonna get reamed for this, and I already know I am, but let me explain why I did what I did right here with my lashes. Normally, artists would separate... Okay, let me just hide this, okay? I know I'm gonna get reamed for that. Normally, artists would go around and they would like take this and they would cut it and they would name each little tiny eyelash its own layer. You can still do that. That is okay. That's fine. Okay, it's not a big deal. Like that is a-okay. I didn't because I'm a piece of garbage and I was lazy. But also because I have seen you can import it into Live2d and you can still manipulate the lashes without cutting it up into several different art meshes, so to say, or layers. It's still possible. Granted, I probably should have separated the bottom and the top, to be honest. But the Live2d modeler can do that if they really want to. It's not going to ruin my art or something if they do it. But yeah, I was kind of lazy when I did that. I am my own worst enemy. Don't be like me. But you can still manipulate the art just fine, and it's not going to look weird when they go to close their eyes. Because my art style for this particular eye, these eyelashes are still going to be in the same position when the eye is closed. Some eyeballs, depending on your eye and your art style, these eyelashes will move down when you close your eyes. This art style, it will not, which is why I didn't separate them, because when the eyeball is closing, they're still going to be in the same place. That might be a little bit more confusing, so whenever I do like a Live2d Cubism tutorial where we actually rig a model, you'll kind of understand a bit more of what I'm talking about here. But I didn't think it was necessary, and it's not, because I don't want the eyelashes to be shifted that way. You can still get the jiggly wiggly eyelash movement though without it being all separated and stuff. It's not going to really affect it. There's amazing tools in Live2d Cubism where they can manipulate the art mesh now in ways that we couldn't before, where it was better to separate it, or you could just separate it. It's preference. But other than that, I have the bottom eyelash, and then I have bottom eyelashes with these two, and I didn't separate them because the theory behind is that when the eye closes, these two are going to move together with it, so it's not necessary. The reason why I don't separate these things too, something to keep in mind of, the canvas size is already 6,000 by 9,000. The more layers you have, the heavier the PSD is going to be. So if I did separate each of these eyelashes, I have to do this on the other eye too. I'm adding in 1, 2, my computer's already lagging. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's like 7 additional layers. Which, no, 14 because of each eye. It's not necessary for my art style to have that all separated, so I did not separate it. I technically could have merged the bottom eyelash and these in this line here. Let me go on this eye so I can show you. I could have technically just merged these two, but I think it's necessary to have that nuance movement for the eyelashes, which is why I separated them, because I wanted more control. Because I want the bottom eyelashes to wiggle a certain way, and it might not work that well if I had merged them. And the only reason why I know this is because I've worked with Live2d Cubism, and I know that it's just a little tedious. Like, it's just nice to have the extra control if you can. It's not the end of the world if I did merge it. You're just gonna have a little less control. It's preference. I'm gonna say it's preference for a lot of stuff, so get used to hearing that. Other than that, the last thing we have here is the eye fold. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. It's the eye fold. I did not merge it with the makeup because, again, control. With the makeup, if I had merged this, you're now manipulating the eye fold line, which is going to look really weird. You don't want to stretch out the eye fold line. That doesn't make any sense. So, yeah, separate that. Just keep that separated. And that is all it is for the eyes. The eyes are pretty much done other than that. Yeah, that's pretty much for the eyes. I do have an expressions folder. I'll quickly just go over that. If you're going to do expressions for your client, depending on what kind of expressions you want to do, you can make a completely new folder labeled expressions, or you could put the expressions in the actual eye folders themselves. It's kind of preference. And depends on how you want it to look and stuff. I don't want the swirlies to be inside the eyeball. I want the toggle to be where it's just kind of like this. Because it gives a different nuance to it for, like, an anime character, right? There is nuance to it being outside like this, where it's all toggled off, versus if it were like this. Like, do you see how, like, there's kind of a nuance to this? It does make a difference. And it's up to your client's preference on what they would prefer. Also, I'm aware that these are reversed. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. Because basically when the modeler goes into Live2d Cubism, they're going to just work on one eyeball, and then they're just going to flip it. The reason why you want to separate into 2 different layers is because one of the eyeballs, like one of these folders, is just going to be a reference set for them. So it's okay if these are kind of in reverse. It's not going to matter. They're going to flip it over and match it anyways. Oh, let me put the... I hope this is making sense. I hope I'm not, like, overwhelming you guys. Like, it is a lot to think about. Especially if this is your first time doing it. You might be thinking, well, I don't know how much should I be drawing? Do I need to separate my eyes like this? If you have like a more simplistic model, you don't have to separate as much, because maybe your model doesn't have as many eyelashes. Or even a side lash. Or maybe you have like a solid color eye. Then you'll have less layers. It depends on how detailed you want your model to look. Again, you might not even have makeup on your model, so you don't even have to worry about any of that stuff. Other than that, I am gonna take a sip of my drink. Get up and, you know, stretch everybody. Grab some, ooh, 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 whoa, what the hell just happened there? That was weird. That was weird. Get up and stretch. Get yourself a little snack if you need to before we continue, you know. Maybe some gamer subs as you, enjoy this little step-by-step guide through. Make sure you stretch. I'm gonna drink my avocado slush. Also gonna drink some gamer subs, excuse me. I'm spending a lot of time on the face because, again, this is what you're gonna see on screen most of the time. It's important. The next part's gonna be the mouth. Bam! Well, mouth and nose. I put the nose in the mouth folder. I don't know why. I don't know why I did that. I'm stupid. That doesn't need to go there. That should actually be its own separate... Actually, it doesn't even need to be in a folder. It should just not be in the mouth thing. I don't know why I did that. So really quick before we do the mouth, let's just go over the nose. Okay, my nose is simple. Okay, I don't have a very detailed, complex nose. That's just not my art style. But I at least do a highlight and a shadow. If you just have a line on your nose, that's okay. My face, if you look at my face, it's kind of hard to tell where my nose is. I just have a dot for my nose. It's your art style, okay? You're gonna have as detailed of a nose that you want. However, if you are drawing, if you have like that type of art style, like the westernized one where you have like the nostrils and stuff, or you're drawing a male VTuber, some male VTubers I notice have like really detailed noses. You should still draw a straight line first. Like, you should still draw a straight line, and then you can draw like the nostrils. The purpose of that is that straight line is going to be the manipulation that the Live2d modeler uses. I'm just saying words now, just to say words. It's going to be the layer that they manipulate to have those angles so it looks correct. I included a nose shine and a nose shadow, and it looks a little weird looking front. I'm aware of that, but my idea behind it was that when they go to turn their head, they'll have a shadow layer. The modeler can like, oh, it doesn't really look that weird, to be honest. It doesn't look that weird like this. It's just art style, you know? And if the client doesn't even want any of that, they can just toggle it off and be like, yeah, this is my nose. But when they go to turn, the highlight and the shadow layer is gonna help give it more depth, if they so desire to have that. Now, look at this here. So, this is a little bit interesting. My client wanted a fang. So, I made that its own layer because if I had drawn the fang on top of the lip, it's not gonna look right in Live2d. It's just, you're not going to be able to manipulate it very well. It's not going to look right. So if you're going to have like a little fang, separate that. The actual lip should just be one line. To be honest, I probably should not have curved it. It's not a big deal. This is kind of like another preference thing where I've already done a default smile. And what I probably could have done is just a straight line and then included a guide of the smile. So that way the Live2d modeler can just do it, because when you have a straight line, it's a lot easier to manipulate in Live2d Cubism, but it's not the end of the world if this is already curved. It's not. It would be if I did a cat face though, where it has the three, where it looks like this. That would be an issue if I didn't draw a straight line first. I could have this as a guide. Like, yeah, I want you to take the straight line and like make it look like that. That is way easier rather than having it look like just the cat mouth, because now your client can't have expressive mouth movements. All they can do is really open and close their mouth. Yeah, because it's really difficult to manipulate that. Hi, Jay. Quick question. When making your own VTuber model, would you make both your eyes on different layers? No. You would make each part on one layer, and then you would go in and circle. You would take the little lasso tool and then separate it. So if I was drawing... Let me just hide all of this. This is just my eyeball, right? Oh, I need the highlight. This right here would be one layer. It would just be called the color. The iris color. This is one layer. And then after this, I would then take this. Well, actually, I wouldn't do this yet. I would start off with this. And then I would draw this. And that's my pupil. Then I would draw the detail. These are their own layers, by the way. So this is 3 layers already. I just didn't separate the left and the right yet. But these would be 3 different layers. Then when it's time to actually separate it, I would go to, you know, the detail layer. I'd lasso this part. I'd press the little scissors button. And then I would label it left and right. And then I would do the same thing for the pupil. Just lasso it left and right. Same thing for like the color. Lasso the entire thing left and right. Don't draw the whole eye details on one layer and be like, all right, how am I going to cut this bad boy up? No, like you should draw each part of the eye, as well as this goes for like any parts of your model. They can be on their own layers. That's why you use the symmetry ruler. The symmetry ruler saves you so much time, because when you have the symmetry ruler, it's already drawing the other side for you, so you don't have to worry about it. You just have to like lasso it after. There we go. Oh, let's not include that. Okay. Let's go back to the mouth. So, thank you for the hydration, by the way. You're gonna notice a couple different layers here. I was just adding some fun stuff. I'm gonna be honest with you, like I have the lip, and now some people might be wondering, where's the top and the bottom lip layer? It's not necessary. The Live2d modeler can just load this into Live2d Cubism, take this lip layer, duplicate it in Live2d Cubism, and then just rename it bottom lip. I'm trying to save how heavy this PSD is, because if I did a top and a bottom lip, it's just the duplicated layer. It's not necessary. It doesn't take up as much space, because they're gonna have to like do that anyways. So I'm trying to make it a little bit easier on the Live2d modeler, because not everyone has really powerful PCs to handle these files. So you can have the lip. I also included lip color in case if they wanted lip color. Not necessary. I just, you know, in case if they wanted to. And then I have my little fang. And then this part here. You see this is called a mouth cover? This is going to become a mask where it is masking the tongue. Because without it, I mean, that's gonna look kind of weird, isn't it? So you have to cover it exactly where it is. And the way this works in Live2d Cubism, they're gonna like clip the mouth cover and the tongue and stuff, and it'll work for that. But for you as the artist, you don't have to like worry about it. You just have to make sure you have a lip cover that covers the whole thing. I have seen some preferences now. The whole like top and bottom lip. There is like a preference where you could have the top lip and then the top part of the skin cover, and then the bottom lip and the bottom part of the skin cover, and then that together will cover the tongue. I don't like that method because I feel like you don't have as much control when you're doing the modeling stuff. And again, if you're the artist and you're not worried about like the modeling part, you don't have to like, again, this is like your preference. I'm not saying you're bad and you're scamming your clients if you do the top lip and skin cover and you merge. I'm not saying like it's your preference. I personally like to do it this way. Especially with the tongue. I have the actual like mouth, and then I have the shadow. I don't have an actual tongue, like I didn't draw like a tongue. But this is kind of like, you know, the tongue inside the mouth. And I did, you know, draw a little excess out like that. So that way there's more control when you're moving your mouth around. You can control like the shadowing. It makes like a more 3D effect. Or you could just not have it. You don't have to have that, you know, to have a mouth. I'm just saying, you don't have to have that. That's fine. That's okay. It's your preference. It's your art style. And then you'll notice up here, I have an open guide. I didn't have to do this. But this is a guide for the Live2d modeler to know what the mouth should look like when it's opened. So that way they know the fang should go up here. The lip line's gonna go up there, and this is how much of it you're gonna show. It's just a guide. It makes it a little bit easier. So that way they're not guessing and they're not ruining or manipulating your art the wrong way. It's, you know, some artists are really protective over their art and how it looks when it's animated. Like, unless if you're the one drawing it, you should always contact the artist, say, hey, is it okay if I like add this or this? Or, you know, because some artists are not okay with you manipulating certain things like that. So I drew the guide so there's no confusion on the manipulation part. And that's really it for the face. Or the mouth, I should say. Actually, yeah, the face. That's pretty much it for the face. Of course, you know, we're about to go into the hair next. And if I had ears, for example, if I had ears here, the ears... I don't even know if I'd put the ears in a folder. I probably would just keep it under the face folder, but I wouldn't like make an ears folder within the face folder. And I don't know, I don't think it's necessary to do that. You can, but I don't think it's necessary. So I would just do like ear L and ear R and call it a day. Whew! How are you feeling so far? It's a lot. Like, it's a lot to learn. And again, I understand why this can look overwhelming at first, especially since I'm showing you all these layers and stuff. But the nice thing about it is that, you know, you're gonna have a really nice model that you can do so many cool things with, right? And unfortunately, when it comes to like the face, because there is so much moving parts, it is better to separate those things. Again, you know, if you don't have the strongest PC and you're okay with like simplistic movements, then you can merge a lot of stuff. But at the very least, you need to have those eye parts separated. Otherwise, you're not going to have blinking. You're not going to be able to blink correctly. The eye detailed separation, that's your preference. That's like, it's not a big deal. Because my model here, my eye details are not separated. Although it might look like it is because of like the jelly movements in my eyeballs, but it's actually not separated. The the modeler who worked on my eyes was able to manipulate it on one layer, which is possible to do, like I had mentioned earlier. It's just I could have had more jello-like movements in my eyes if all of my eye details were separated. But again, it's not necessary. My eyelashes, though, were separated as they should. Just not like the inside of my, like, my eye jellies, you know? I don't know how else to describe it. Let's just look at my eyeballs, okay? Like, you know? It's more intricate movements and stuff, again. For like intricate movements, it depends on what it is you're trying to do, because some stuff you don't need to separate, which I'll get into when we talk about clothing and limbs. But in terms of the face, this is what's recommended by most people. So, let's move on to the hair. I'm gonna be honest with all of you, I hate separating the hair. This is my least favorite thing to do for VTuber models, because if you noticed, I have the hair front, but then I have the hair back, and then I have a hair ball. Oh God, okay. Let's just start with the hair back real quick. It's just one layer. I named it hair ball. That's all it is. It's just a hair ball. It's kind of like the back of your scalp, your skull, you know? So that way when you're turning your head, you can kind of see the ball, the hair ball in the back. But then you'll notice I have something called back hair, which if you look, it's part of the hair ball, but I separated it because, you know, when you're moving your hair, these parts would move, these would bounce, and you wouldn't have good control if these were merged. And I'm not saying you're a bad artist if it is merged. Some people, this is how they draw the hairball, and that's fine. But you are kind of limiting the movement because, well, remember how I showed you the transformative tool when we're like manipulating stuff? You're manipulating all these points when you're trying to turn the head, and that's gonna look kind of weird. So you're kind of limiting the movement by doing that. So what I did was I drew the hair, like the ball of hair, and I did like the base part of where this would meet at the tip of the neck. And then I added the back hair. And if you look at the back hair folder, you'll notice I did a left and a right side. I did this because the idea for me is that, again, when they're turning the head, the left side here is going to move in and get smaller, and the right side's going to move bigger. If I had merged these two and just kept it like one, you can still do it. It's fine. I just feel like, again, it's all about the control thing. I wanted to have more control over like little nuanced stuff. It's not the end of the world if it is merged. And to be honest with you, I probably could have separated this even more. I could have, if I wanted to, I could have separated just each individual strand. That is possible if you want like that much control, but I don't think it's necessary because the way hair moves, at least how I am imagining it for this particular piece, I'd imagine that these would move at the same frequency and the same rate. So I didn't think it was necessary to separate each individual strand for this. And everyone's hairstyle is going to be separated differently depending on the hairstyle, your art style. So this is just how I did it for this client. That's just the hair back. So let's bring the face back so I can show you the hair front. There's a lot more separation that went into this. By the way, did you know they have a nahoge? I did draw that. I did. I hide it though because it kind of pokes through with the hat, which looks kind of weird. But again, in the modeling program, you would just clip this and then it won't show in the hat. Or you could just use the opacity tool where you just make it like disappear. But yes, there is an ahoge, and you want that to be separated because that's going to have its, when the hair is moving, it's going to move at its own speed because of this type of strand. That's how I think about in terms of separating. When I separate things like hair, I think to myself, is this part of the hair going to move together in a group, or does it make more sense to have it move in its own separate direction? And you'll notice that I have like ones that are unseparated. The reason why I have these unseparated ones is because you see these like layers here. So my client had a couple different hairstyle choices for patterns on like the hair, and we decided to go with these triangles. Let me zoom in. We decided to go with these triangles and like this type of like shading. In case if the client changes their mind in the future and they're like, actually, Mari, I don't like the triangles or like this type of shading. Can we go with the other option that's on my reference sheet? Do you know how much of a pain in the butt it is for me to have to go back into my file and redraw the entire hair from scratch because I merged all the layers? So for myself, you don't need to do this. For myself, in case if the client ever wanted me to change what's going on in the hair, for this particular client, I made an unseparated folder for myself. This is like for me. But what I gave the actual client is the merged version, which looks like this. It's just 3 pieces, so it's like merged. So I have the unmerged version for the hair just in case if I need to change anything, because I don't want to deal with it. You know, I don't want to have to redraw it all. I'm lazy. So the bangs is pretty straightforward. You have the middle piece and you have the right piece and the left. I have seen some people who have bangs where it's all just merged, but for me, I feel like with the way the hair moves and stuff, I think it makes more sense to have these separated, because when they turn their head, this is going to get smaller and this is going to get wider. And if you notice, do you notice how these overlap each other? It's not much. It doesn't overlap each other by much. It's actually pretty minimal. Let me do a multiply layer. I need to remember that my client's model is it isn't made here. Let me change the color. Okay. Okay, do you see right here how it overlaps a little bit? I probably could have drawn a little bit more. It's okay. But you do want it to kind of overlap a little bit, because the physics when the hair is moving, if this was perfectly in line, there's going to be that void. We don't want that void, right? But this is kind of like the bare minimum for that. I could have added extra if I wanted to. It's not a big deal though. You do want it to be a little bit over. Just so that way when the hair is moving, it's not going to have the void issue. Let me stretch. Sorry, I like injured my neck because I've been sitting like a cooked shrimp. I've been reading a lot of books lately and I'm hunched over. I've been reading a lot. So I'm like, oh, my neck. Oh, your waifu's neck is all messed up. I'd offer for you to rub my back, but I'm kind of sticky right now, so that's probably not the best, like, thing. So, anyway, it doesn't matter. So, stretch your back. You artist out there, I know you're looking like a cooked shrimp. Stretch out your back. That's all I did for the bangs. I didn't do anything else. So let's go on to the side hair. I named it side hair because, well, it's on the sides. It's on the sides. This is very straightforward. I have a left and I have a right. I only did 2 layers. Depending on the movement that the client might have wanted, I could separate this where I'd draw like the one strip, and then I'd separate like this. I'd separate this as this would be like 1 layer. This would be 1 layer. I could even separate this as like 1 layer, and then remember how I said about the void thing? I'd fill a little bit extra here. But here's the thing: my client is a jellyfish axolotl, so I'm trying to think about how jellyfish move. It doesn't make sense to have that much wiggly jiggly jello stuff, because you gotta think like it's the texture of my client's hair is meant to feel like a jellyfish. So that's why I did not separate these. It's not actual hair. I imagine it's like jelly. Hopefully that makes sense, because like some people might be like, why are you not separating all this stuff? Because you can if it was actual hair. So let me see here. So that's like the front bangs and that's the side. Then I have the actual hair parts, which are these right here. And here, it might be easier if I hide all of this. Remember how I talked about the overlaps? You'll notice that it's kind of overlapped. So if I put the face back on, you see how it's like covering the face right here? And it has that overlapness. Again, you don't want it to match the line perfectly. You want to make sure there's space, because when the client turns their head, I drew extra parts of this because I don't want my art being stretched out too much, because it's a jellyfish. So it's supposed to kind of be, well, it's an axolotl. Axolotl with like jelly-like characteristics. You don't want it to like feel too stretched. You want it to have that kind of natural like feeling for it. So I drew extra because when the modeler turns the head, they have some retail space to be able to move the bangs and the hair a certain way. So that way you have like that, it's really hard to describe if I don't have Live2d Cubism open, but when we actually open the program in another stream, you'll kind of understand what I mean. It will just look more natural. It gives them more space to work with. And that's how I did the hair. Let me see here. Now you might see that I have some shadow. It's kind of hard to tell because again, it's like being covered by all the hair, but if I were to hide the shadow, not the shadow, if I were to hide the hair, do you see how it's like it's overlaid and all that stuff? It's all multiplied. So I did the very lazy way on doing this. Some artists will actually manually take the hair and like draw how they want the shade and stuff. I did the lazy method where I duplicated each part, like each individual part of the hair, and then I went into my filter up on the top toolbar. I went to correction, and then I went to adjust line width, and I just made it a little bit thicker. And that's fine because it looks fine. Again, some people's shading techniques are a little bit different. Mine's very simplistic. I'm a simple woman. And it's fine if it's like this because this is gonna get clipped anyways. So even though like yes, there is shade out here, it's gonna get clipped to the hair. So if anything, it just gives the Live2d modeler more retail space to manipulate the hair shadows. Also, hello, welcome readers. Hello, we're learning things about Live2d. I hope you are enjoying the stream, and everyone else is just tuning in and stuff. Also, I noticed that Trevor became a member. I'm so sorry I didn't mention that earlier. Thank you for that, by the way. I appreciate you. Hopefully you're enjoying this kind of stuff. Oh, fun little thing about members too. I am rebranding, so I am working on my model concept. This is not the new model concept. This is me. This is just not the one that I am working on. This is something that I had commissioned an artist, but they weren't able to work on it anymore, so I will be continuing this. And I'm gonna be doing this for like learning purposes for all of you. Like I'm gonna teach you how to draw all the parts, because today's stream I'm kind of showing you my process on what I did. This one you're gonna actually watch me draw the layers and everything, and then go through the tedious naming each layer process. Like we'll actually draw, but that's for like a future thing. And yes, this model will get used. It's PM-chan. Yeah, this is gonna be PM-chan's new form, so spoilers, but like that's not my rebrand. So yeah, I'd like to just specify that. I'm getting a complete new makeover. I haven't started. I was trying to like draw some concepts of how I wanted my makeover to look, but yeah, that's irrelevant information right now. But if you remember, you get sneak peek and early access to it, so that's the perks of being a member, and you get to help me make decisions on it. Worth it. So that's all the hair. The multiply layers, I only took the front bangs and I clipped it to the face, because if you think about it, it's clipped to your face. I probably could have clipped these two to the face, but I didn't, because there is going to be some shadow parts on top of the hair, so it's not necessary. They can mess with that in Live2d Cubism. So now that we have completed the face, I'm not going to do the hat just yet. I'll talk about that after. Let's talk about the body. Let's talk about the body. Bam. Look at all that. Look at all that. Why did I not include the shoes in there? That's... Huh? The shoes should be in this. I still did not include the shoes in this. Get in there. Okay. I was like, wait a minute. There we go. I could include the tail, but I didn't, because if they wanted to have like a deformer for the whole body without it messing up the tail, I did it that way. I also included the back of the hoodie outside of it, because when I put it in like the body layer, it kind of did something weird with like the back hair, so I wanted to make sure that the back hair is in front of the hoodie back. That's why that's like that. The heck is my hoodie? Did I accidentally delete that layer when I had deleted the folder earlier? Maybe. Ignore what's happened. I'm reversing a lot of stuff right now. Excuse me. How far back can we... Yep. Alright, there we go. I did delete it. Okay. I was like, wait, what? I deleted the hoodie by accident. Okay. Okay, cool, cool. Okay, everything's back. Let's just hide the symmetry ruler. So, I have the whole body here. The shoes and the shoes can go with the body. I did separate them though, I don't remember why, but for the hoodie, I don't have the hoodie in the body layer because I wanted to make sure that it's in front of the clothing but behind the hair. I don't know, like when I was trying to do it, it was doing some weird stuff with it, so I did make it its own folder on top. And all the hoodie is just let me hide the back hoodie. All my hoodie is I have the actual hoodie, and then I have the fluff. And again, it is layered because, you know, the fluff is going to move it in its own way compared to the hoodie part. It's very subtle, but I felt like it was necessary to separate. You'll notice that I didn't do a left and the right side for the hoodie. I don't think it's necessary. If the Live2d modeler wanted to, they could just lasso it because let me hide all of this. They could easily just lasso it and do left and right if they feel, but I don't think it's necessary. So when it comes to like separating this kind of stuff, I think about if I feel like the Live2d modeler wants it to be separated and it's not easy for them to just simply lasso like this without ruining my art and getting that weird void, then I will separate it. But this can easily just be lassoed. It's not going to mess up my art, so that's why I didn't. And it's up to them if they want to do it, but it's really not necessary because like when you're turning around, you don't need that much control over like a hoodie. That's preference. However, you should separate the front of the hoodie and the back. So if you notice, the back part looks like that. And there is overlap between the back and the front because when you're turning, if you don't have like more of the back to be shown, when one side of it gets smaller and the other gets bigger, you might run into like that void issue and you don't want that. So you want to make sure the back of the hoodie has a little bit extra filling. And the same thing can be said for like chokers if you have like a necklace. It's the same thing for like, I don't know, other like stuff too. Let me think here. It's the same for like what else? Collars. If you have like a shirt collar, it's good for that. If the chat lags at all, it's just because like what's it called? It's just Streamlabs. And I'm probably cooking my PC right now. Who knows? Let me see here. Put this up here. This. There you go. Okay, so why don't I hide the hoodie in the back hoodie and show the body? You'll notice that the body, the way I did it, there's not as many layers, and that's because, well, I didn't separate the pants. I actually kept them like this. I could, if I wanted to, I could separate the legs, you know, top to bottom. But again, we don't want to just lasso and then press the cut, right? When I would draw it, I would do the line art, the base color, and then before I would get into like the shading and stuff and merge everything, I would like go in and separate the top and the bottom, and then I'd separate left to right. I didn't because I found out that for leg movements, you actually don't need to separate them. You can manipulate the way Live2d Cubism works now. You can actually manipulate it without merging that. Sorry, without separating it. That's like a preference thing. If like the modeler asks me to separate it because they, I don't know, they want to do like a walking animation or something, then I will. But that's like a really complex thing for the modeler, and that's like a really complex thing. So that's something I don't mind redrawing and redoing, because we can do the whole method of remember you circle it, you copy it, and then you just erase away. I can easily just do that. That doesn't take that much time. But it's not necessary, and I'm saving space. Same thing with the shirt. The shirt is just one piece. It's just your torso. So if I had like a crop top, you would have the crop top and then you'd have the belly, like the tummy. If I had some booba, you would draw the whole torso and then you draw the booba. That's booba, everybody. You draw that on its own layer. And then for this client, I didn't have to draw the arms because the actual model has like a jacket, but I was like, well, what if they wanted to toggle the jacket off? Why don't I save myself the time to just draw the hands and the arms already? And I did separate the sleeves, but I kept the arms incomplete because, you know, I could have separated this, and I could even separate like the hands, but that's unless if they're trying to do complex arm movements, that's not like what I was paid for. So it's one of those things where I threw in the arms as like a little extra. I didn't have to do that. So for me to like sit down and cut up each little finger, so that way there could be movement for that, that would be under the speculation that they wanted complex arm movements, which is not what I was paid to do. So there is like that whole balance of like complex movements. And you can still do complex movements with this all in one layer. If I have to like separate it, it's not going to take me that much effort to do too, because I can just do the whole copy method. Although with the fingers, I would have to redraw these entirely. I'd have to redraw it. And that would cost extra. Because like that is something that, you know, when you get commissioned, you commission like an artist, unless if you tell them, hey, I want to move my fingers, like I want to be able to do that, most artists will just draw them on one layer. That's pretty common. So for the jacket part, you'll notice that like here, there is some shadow underneath the jacket because the jacket's opened. If it was closed, I wouldn't have this shadow layer, but I do because it's open. So when they're moving around and stuff, like you're gonna see a little bit of shadow. And then also welcome in everybody that's just tuning in. It's kind of interesting how, you know, like I get a lot of people who ask me to do more tutorials and like explanations, and every time I do it, I get a lot of people who come in and they're like, what's going on? What are we doing? And I'm like, read the title. Also, thank you at Kirby for joining with the Prime. And for my particular model, you're asking about like my choker. Because my choker isn't really, it's all black. It's very easy to just have the one layer. You don't need a back for mine because I don't really turn that much to have a back. So it's not necessary. Also, thank you, Leon, for the 100 bits, by the way. What do you call me? That's pretty funny. I appreciate your pun. Let me see. Oh, this is something that we can kind of go over. Okay, so I have the jacket right here. But then you'll notice I have line art right here. What? I have line art for the sleeves. And I also have details for the sleeves. Why did I merge everything for one layer on the jacket, but for the sleeves, I separated the base color, the little goldy patterns, and then the line art? Because I found out when you're turning, you can have a really nice 3D movement if you take into consideration of how it's going to look when it turns. So if you notice, I drew excess parts right here because the front part of the jacket is, you're not going to like see the inside of like the jacket when they're turning. That's not really likely. Maybe it could depend on how deep of an angle you want to do, but for the arms, you can have so much more movement if you draw the extra pattern of what it would look like when they turn to their side. And I could have merged the line art with the actual sleeves, but I found out that you can just mask it, where you just draw like a big mask right here for the line art and for the actual sleeves, so that when they turn, they can show the other parts of this. This is a pretty advanced thing. Like, you don't have to do this if you don't want to, but it gives you more free movement. And normally artists charge extra for that. I didn't. Just because I took a really long time on this commission, so I threw this in there as like I'm sorry that I took so long. And that's pretty much what I did for the jacket. Depending on how many clothing items you have, it's all gonna kind of differentiate, but for the most part, when you have like your torso, you're gonna have the torso, unless if it's a crop top, then you'll have like the belly and then the torso. And even though I have seen like some people like merge those two parts together too, it's preference. And then same with the pants. Now the neck. Let's talk about the neck. The neck is kind of interesting. I've seen people do this very differently depending on what it is that they're trying to do. This is how I did it. I've seen some people do a collarbone where they'll just have like this part here, and then they'll have the neck on top of it. But when you think about how necks on a human body moves, you're not having the neck move around all this like way. It's fine if you just draw the neck like this. It's not a big deal. I do suggest creating a separate layer for the shadow for the neck, because when you turn your head, the shadow angle is going to move differently. I do recommend that. You don't have to. Some artists don't. I do, because I feel like it makes more sense. You can have more like dynamic movement that way. And have a good night, and thank you so much for watching. There's not that much else to go through for this. We're almost done. So I appreciate you hanging out. So tell me here, let's see. All that's left now. Let's see here. Kind of like the fun part now. Yeah. Wow, we're almost done. Now we get to move on to like the fun part, the little extras. I have a tail. Let me see. I have a tail. If you notice right here, I did draw the back of the jacket. Let me hide that. I did draw the back of the jacket, or the hoodie, whatever. And I named it that because I was thinking if the client wanted to like have a more dynamic movement, you would want to see the back of the, you would see this, like, you would just see it. So I drew it just in case. You don't have to though. But the tail is just simple. It's literally just the tail. It's hard to see, I realize. Let me... It's just a tail. Not much to it. It's just a tail. Granted, if this were like a cat tail or a dog tail, I would have this as the reference layer, and then I would draw the tail again, but I would draw it in a completely straight line. But since this is an axolotl, you can manipulate it with it being curved like this already. Because it's not gonna have the same movement as like a fox tail or like a dog tail. It's not gonna like bend in that way. You can still make this bend though. You can still make this bend on each little side if you want to. It's still possible. But when you think about like the creature and what species this is, it's not gonna have like that super like fluid movement that those animals would have. And so that's why I drew it like this. Thank you for the hydration, by the way. Now let's talk about the shoes real quick. It's really simple, straightforward. It's just left and right for the shoe. And if I had the body, you notice how like the shoe goes up a little bit. So you see how like I filled in more of the shoe. If I only drew like right here, what if they wanted to go on their tippy toes a little bit or like turn their shoe? You'd have the void. So I drew a little excess of the shoe. Depending on how deep of an angle turn they wanted their body, I could draw the back of the shoe heel. But that, you know, that's a very like dynamic thing to draw. And that costs extra. Pretty much, if you're ever wondering as an artist what to charge for certain things, if it requires you to draw like a whole new reference sheet for you to be able to draw that layer, you can charge extra for that, because that's like a really, really complex thing to do. It's very complex. And again, it's your time at the end of the day. So you charge what you think is fair. And anyone who has to complain about it can learn to draw themselves. Let me see here. Other than that, all I have left now is the hat. It took me a couple different tries to draw the hat because I've never drawn a hat before. Especially like this type of hat. So this took me a really long time to kind of get the shape right and like get the pieces to work, because if you notice on my layers here, I did draw the excess because when the client moves their head down on their model, I wanted to have the ability for the model to have the perspective of the top part of the hat being shown. So I did draw that excess part. And then you'll notice here on this headpiece, I separated the shine, and it's an additive glow because remember, you can only have multiplier additive. And I have the shines like this because I saw in Live2d, you can do this really cool trick where you can have the light. Let's see if I take it like this and I move it. Let's say like when they're turning their head, you can do this. Like, look how cool that looks. Like you can actually have it move around like that. And that's why I separated it. Because I just thought it was cool. it looks really cool in like Live2d Cubism. And then this is the hat shadow. Now, if you notice, it's not multiplying correctly. That's because I didn't take the hat. It's on a normal layer right now. If I take it to through, you see how now? Remember how I mentioned earlier the through? That's specifically a Clip Studio Paint thing. I don't know what it's like in other art programs. So I made the entire hat folder a through, so that way this special shading layer goes through it correctly. But I don't have to. It's not a big deal. They can fix that in Cubism too if they need to. You'll notice I have a hat perspective. This hat perspective is so, remember how I said earlier, when the client moves their head down, I want this part to show. This hat perspective that I drew is just the extra part of the hat, because I don't want them to stretch out the front part of the hat here. I want them to be able to move the hat down and then have these two parts blur together. So that way, when you're turning the head down, it actually feels like it's turning down. And there's not any uncanny valley and like stretching of the art. And that was really hard to draw because I had to think about it. I had to actually draw a little reference of what the head would look like going down. Normally I would charge extra for that because again, it's based off of complexity. I threw that in for free because I took a really long time to work on this and I felt bad. So I threw that in. And other than that, that's pretty much all I have for like this particular art piece. There's always going to be differences depending on what it is that you're drawing, how complex of a movement you want. A good rule of thumb is if you want it to have its own dynamic movement, you're going to want to separate it on its own layer. Like the fingertips, for example, I would have separated each individual finger if the client wanted like finger movement. Sounds kind of sus, right? But like that's how you kind of think about it. When it comes to like hair, again, I could have separated the hair more, but they're an axolotl. They're not going to have like the same movements of hair like my hair does. Those are things to kind of keep in mind when you're working on either your model or like a client's model. What is the species? What is the clothing going to really look like when it's moving? Obviously, a hoodie is not going to have super flowy movement like my little camisole that I have here and my ribbon. That's going to have more fluid movement. So yes, you would believe that my ribbon is separated by left and right of each little part of the ribbon. And my little bear that's on it. It all just, like, if you're ever struggling, look at real life photos and look at things in motion and see how things are moving. I've seen some Live2d modelers look at dolls. Like, they'll have, like, this 3D doll and they'll kind of, like, look at the perspective of it to see how it would look. To kind of help give you a visual context of what it would look like. And again, if you're an artist, you don't really have to worry about Live2d Cubism. I do recommend messing around with the program though, so that way you have some kind of idea of how it works when you take, because someone is manipulating your art. You should have like a somewhat of an understanding of what it's going to look like when it's in motion. Because at the end of the day, you, the artist and the modeler are working together to create an animation when it comes to Live2d, or well, just 2D VTubers in general. You two, or unless if you're both, unless if you are the artist and the modeler, you are basically doing animations. And instead of having to do the tedious process of doing frame by frame animation, we have the luxury of just cutting things up and being able to manipulate all of these little pieces as if it were frame by frame animation. So I hope that this could be educational and kind of teach you something. And hopefully this cleared up a lot of like confusions and stuff, because I tried to make sure I answered questions that I saw on my old video when I had made this way back in the day. So if you asked me, if you have a piece that would mostly be visible from the side, like a shoulder patch, would you just draw that separately as a full view and then it would be wrapped the perspective you would get from the front later? A shoulder patch, like armor or something, because you could just draw the front perspective and it's fine. The only time you want to draw the entire perspective is if you're going to do this super dynamic like shoulder turn. Like my shoulders here are just its own layer here because I don't have like a super dynamic turn. So if I were to like, let's say I really wanted to turn my body, my little, on my right hand side here, you see my little ribbons and stuff. You see how like they're attached to my sleeve like this way? It is possible to, extend that so that way I could have a more like perspective when I'm moving, but it looks fine. It's just the front facing view of the manipulation. If you notice, like my clothing, my little folds and stuff is not separated. You could separate those if you wanted to. But it's not necessary. It still looks good. And you wouldn't be able to tell the difference unless if you're like examining under the microscope. But yeah, if you notice, my clothing, for me in particular, my clothing is not separated as much as I did for this client. It's not necessary. It looks fine just the way it is. I like it. It's all like preference on, again, how dynamic of a movement you want to have. Hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. Honestly, if you're ever wondering just how to do things, the best way to learn is to just start doing it and then throwing it into Live2d Cubism, and you're like, oh, okay, this kind of looks a little weird. How do I get around this? And then going back in and like drawing and stuff, like, you know, play around with the program. The more you do it, the better you'll get. This took me years to kind of conceptualize a little bit better, because my biggest struggle was conceptualizing what's it going to look like. Because if I'm not the one doing the animations, I have to kind of imagine what it's going to look like, what the final product's going to be, and then that's how I'll base the drawing. It's kind of like a case-by-case thing, and again, charge by how much time it's going to take you. It can take a lot of time, or it could not. Depends on how fast you are, how complicated of the movement you want it to be, and how well detailed you want it to be. If you didn't have any shading layers or anything like that, and it's all just like color and line art, like you're doing like a little crayon chibi model or something, it's not going to take you that long, and you don't have to have as many different layers separated. If you ever want me to do more separation tutorials, like separation live streams, I can definitely do that. I can show you like chibis, I can show you like what it's like when you have booba, I can show you like really special characteristics for like scales and fur, an actual ton out thing. Just let me know. This is kind of like a general overview of like a full body model, and if you wanted something a little bit more complex, like I didn't have to add those extras in. Like I said, it would have been fine. It's still gonna look amazing when it's modeled. I just threw those in because I did take a little bit longer on this than what was expected, so that was kind of like my how to make up when I am slow on commissions. I throw in fun extras like that, because normally I would charge for those because that stuff does take more time. But again, you're the artist at the end of the day. You charge what you think is fair, and anyone who has to complain about anyone's prices as an artist can learn to draw themselves and stop being a little baby bitch. So, you know, that's how it is. And I hope today taught you something really cool and valuable. Let me know what you thought about this, everyone. I tried to answer as many questions as I could in here. Hopefully I got to answer some stuff that you might have been confused on. If you still have any more questions about it, just leave a comment down below or join the Discord. We have like a whole little Live2d and a 3D section. I do want to get into 3D models stuff soon. I want to remake my Vroid Studio tutorial, and I thought we could do like a little paint sculpting session, but that's in the future. For now, I'm thinking the next step from this is to actually sit down and draw this, because this is just one layer. So I'd have to I have to go in and like actually draw the face, and like, you know what I mean? Like, so this is gonna be fun. I can't wait to do this. It's gonna be more, this is not gonna get done in one stream. This will be like a couple streams throughout. So yeah, tune in for that. And other than that, everyone, make sure you support me by getting some amazing gamer suppies. And while you're doing that, by using my code Mari for 10% off, I have one more important announcement I need to make before I sign off. Tomorrow, I am doing a sponsored stream. I'm watching one of the V4 Mirai girls' debuts. I'm watching Rem. So tomorrow, we're going to be watching, reacting, having a good time for her debut, and then we're gonna go raid her and support her. I'm really excited because you know how I feel about the V4 Mirai girls. I love them all. They're all really talented. I cannot wait for Gen 3's like debut tomorrow. It's gonna be exciting. So yes, I just wanted to kind of give like that little tidbit of what we're gonna do tomorrow. It's gonna be fun. So yeah. As for the join the Discord, it should work. It should work. If for whatever reason, if it doesn't work. I don't know, try again, lose. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I'll make a new little join thing. There you go, so that link should work now. Alright everyone, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope this could teach you something. And remember everybody, everything reminds you of something. Bye, I'm gonna go to bed now.